If you ever drive for a rideshare company, there's one piece of advice I hope you'll remember. Never accept one last ride just because it's on your way home. That's exactly how this started. I've been driving nights for almost 3 years. Weekends usually pay well, especially around the bars downtown. By 2 in the morning, most of the requests slowed down, and that's usually when I head home. That Friday had been exhausting. I had already decided I was done for the night. Then one more ride appeared on my phone. 8 minutes away. The pickup location was an old train station on the edge of town. The destination was only 15 minutes from my apartment. Perfect. I accepted it. The roads were almost empty. A thin layer of fog had settled over everything, making the streetlights look blurry. When I pulled into the station parking lot, there wasn't a single car. Just one person. A man, maybe 25. He wore a dark jacket and carried no luggage. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was simply standing there, staring at the empty railroad tracks. After almost a minute, he slowly walked toward my car and climbed into the back seat. "Evening," I said. He nodded. His voice was calm. "Thanks for stopping." "No problem." I pulled away from the station. The app still showed the destination. Everything seemed normal. For the first few minutes, neither of us spoke. Then he asked, "Do you ever wonder how many strangers remember your face?" It wasn't exactly small talk. I laughed. Not really. I remember every driver. Something about the way he said it made me check the rearview mirror. He wasn't looking at me. He was watching the road behind us. After another minute, he quietly said, "You've changed cars." I frowned. "What?" "Last time it was silver." I looked back again. "I think you've got the wrong driver." "No, you drove me 2 years ago." I shook my head. "I started doing rideshare 3 years ago." "I know." His answer came too quickly. "You picked me up during your first winter." I tried remembering. Thousands of passengers. Faces blurred together after a while. "I'm sorry," I said. "I don't remember." He smiled. "That's normal," the ride continued. Then little things started bothering me. Every traffic light ahead turned green before we reached it. Not one. Every single one. There wasn't another vehicle anywhere around us. No cross traffic. No pedestrians. Nothing. Just empty streets. I checked the clock. 2:17 a.m. A few minutes later I looked again. Still 2:17. I tapped the screen. Nothing. The clock had frozen. Then I noticed something stranger. The navigation wasn't changing anymore. The blue arrow that represented my car had stopped moving. But we were still driving. The road outside continued passing beneath us. My stomach tightened. I restarted the app. The screen went black for a second. When it returned, the destination had disappeared. Instead, it simply read, "Continue straight, no address, no arrival time." Just those 2 words. I forced a laugh. Guess the app's glitching. The passenger quietly answered, "It isn't." For the first time since he'd entered the car, he looked directly into the mirror. Our eyes met. I nearly slammed on the brakes. His reflection wasn't looking at me. It was looking down. At the empty seat beside him. As if someone else were sitting there. I spun around. The back seat contained only him. "What happened?" he asked. "Nothing." "You saw her." The hair on my arm stood up. "I didn't see anyone. You looked." His smile disappeared. "So did the last driver." I didn't ask another question. Instead, I pulled into the first gas station I saw. Or at least, I tried to. I turned the steering wheel. The car kept going straight. I hit the brakes. Nothing. No slowing down. No screeching tires. It was like the road itself had decided where we were going. I started panicking. I pressed the hazard lights. Nothing. The dashboard suddenly went dark. The engine became completely silent. Yet somehow, we were still moving. The passenger finally spoke again. "You're almost there." "There where?" "My stop." "I don't know where your stop is." "You will." The fog outside grew thicker. Buildings disappeared. Streetlights vanished. Eventually there was nothing beyond the headlights except white. Then the road ended. Ahead stood an old railroad crossing. The gate was lowered. The red warning lights flashed slowly. No train, no sound, just endless fog. The car rolled to a stop by itself. The passenger opened the door. Before stepping out, he leaned forward. I waited a long time for someone who remembered me. "I don't know who you are." "I know," he smiled sadly. "That's the problem." Then he walked into the fog. Within seconds, he was gone. Not faded away. Gone, like he'd never been there. My dashboard suddenly lit back up. The engine roared to life. The clock changed. 2:18 a.m. Exactly 1 minute had passed. I drove straight home without accepting another ride. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I searched online for the old train station. Buried beneath pages of local history was a newspaper article from 3 years earlier. A rideshare driver had vanished after accepting a pickup from that exact station. His car was found 2 days later. Locked. Engine running. Phone still mounted on the dashboard. The ride had never officially ended. Police never found the passenger, or the driver. I stared at the article for a long time. Then I looked at my own rideshare history. That trip wasn't there. No pickup, no payment, no passenger, nothing. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Until yesterday, my phone buzzed while I was eating lunch. A notification from the rideshare app. Passenger rated your trip. There was no name, no profile picture, just one message. Thanks for remembering this time. I don't believe in ghosts. I know that's how every creepy story starts, but it's the truth. I grew up in a family that blamed everything on spirits. If the lights flickered, it was a ghost. If someone got sick, it was a curse. If the dog barked at nothing, there had to be something standing there. I never believed any of it. I've always thought there was a logical explanation for everything. That's why I still can't explain what happened that night. It was a Friday, just after 2 in the morning. I'd spent the evening at my college reunion. It had been almost 10 years since I'd seen most of those people, and everyone seemed determined to make up for lost time. Stories turned into drinks. Drinks turned into more drinks. By the time people started leaving, I knew I wasn't sober enough to drive. My hotel was about an hour away. Calling an Uber was the obvious choice. The driver arrived 4 minutes later in a gray SUV. He looked to be in his early 30s. Nothing unusual about him. As soon as I got in, he smiled. "You're officially my last ride of the night." I laughed. "Good. I'm probably your easiest customer," he chuckled. "I'm serious. After I drop you off, I'm done. My wife keeps texting me asking when I'm finally coming home." For the first 10 minutes, everything felt completely normal. We talked about work, the rising cost of everything, how impossible it was to find time for yourself once you had kids. He told me he only drove on weekends to help pay for his daughter's daycare. He seemed like one of those people who could strike up a conversation with anyone. Then his GPS chimed. Route changed due to road closure. He frowned. "That's strange. What happened?" "No clue. Probably construction." The GPS directed us off the highway onto a narrow 2-lane road I'd never seen before. "You know this way?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, but GPS usually knows better than I do." The road twisted through dense woods, no houses, no streetlights, no other cars, just trees. After about 15 minutes, the forest suddenly opened. There was a town. Not a neighborhood, an actual town. Streetlights, storefronts, a diner, a pharmacy, a grocery store. Everything looked perfectly normal, except for one thing. It was almost 3 in the morning. Every business was open. The diner was full of people eating breakfast. The grocery store parking lot had cars coming and going. People walked along the sidewalks carrying shopping bags. Nobody looked drunk. Nobody looked tired. I leaned forward. "Who shops at 3 in the morning?" The driver shrugged. "Maybe there's a factory nearby." That sounded reasonable. Until I noticed 2 little kids riding bicycles down Main Street. They couldn't have been older than 8. No parents, no helmets, just laughing. At 3 in the morning. The driver noticed them too. Neither of us said anything. Then something else caught my attention. Nobody was looking at a phone, not one person. People waiting outside the diner, talking face to face. Cashiers looking straight ahead, drivers watching the road. Everyone seemed completely focused on whatever was directly in front of them. It was such a tiny detail. But once I noticed it, I couldn't stop noticing it. The GPS spoke again. "In 500 feet, turn left." We did. 5 minutes later, we drove past the exact same diner. The driver frowned. I definitely turned. "You sure?" "I've been driving for 6 years. I know how to follow a GPS." He restarted it. The screen refreshed, then displayed only 4 words. "Continue straight, no street names, no arrival time, no destination, just continue straight." Neither of us spoke. Eventually, he pointed toward a gas station. I'm pulling in. The place looked brand new. Inside, soft country music played through hidden speakers. The shelves were fully stocked. An older man with silver hair stood behind the register. He smiled as we walked in. Passing through? Yeah, the driver answered. Our GP's acting weird. The cashier nodded slowly. It usually does. The driver laughed. No, seriously. How do we get back to Highway 41? The old man looked out the window for a moment, then back at us. You don't. The driver smiled awkwardly. I'm sorry. You'll find it eventually. The room went completely quiet. I waited for him to explain. He never did. We walked back outside. As soon as we got in the SUV, the driver locked the doors. Not because he looked frightened, because he looked confused. I don't like that guy. Neither did I. As we pulled away, I looked through the back window. The cashier had walked outside. He stood perfectly still, watching us leave. He didn't wave. He didn't blink. He just watched. 10 minutes later, we passed the same gas station again. Neither of us spoke. The driver tightened his grip on the steering wheel. I've driven in every county around here. I've never seen this place. I checked my phone. No signal, no internet, even my downloaded maps wouldn't open. Then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The time on my phone still read, 2:58 a.m. I looked at the dashboard clock. 2:58. We had been driving for at least 30 minutes. The driver stared at the clock, then tapped it twice. Nothing changed. That isn't possible. It was the first time all night he stopped trying to explain things. A few minutes later, the road curved sharply. Without warning, the trees returned. The town disappeared behind us. The GPS reconnected. My phone buzzed with 3 missed calls from a friend from the reunion asking if I'd made it back safely. The dashboard clock jumped to 3:31 a.m. Neither of us spoke for the rest of the drive. When we finally reached my hotel, I thanked him. He nodded but didn't smile. Before I got out, he quietly said, If anyone asks, tell them we got lost. I asked him why. He kept staring through the windshield. Because if I tell people what actually happened, I'll sound insane. I closed the door. He drove away. I never saw him again. People have asked me why I never went back. The truth is, I didn't want to. Whatever that place was. Whether it was some forgotten town, a hallucination, or something I'll never understand. I wasn't willing to risk finding it again. Some questions don't need answers. But every now and then, usually around 3 in the morning, I wake up for no reason. For just a second, I smell fresh coffee. I hear children laughing somewhere outside. And I remember that old cashier standing there, waiting for us to come back. There are some memories that never leave you, no matter how hard you try to convince yourself they weren't real. Every time I drive through my hometown, I still avoid Hollow Creek Road. Most people think it's because of the accident that happened there years ago. It isn't. It's because of the girl I picked up on that road. I grew up in Ashwood, a quiet town where everyone knew everyone. After high school, I moved 3 states away and never looked back. My parents eventually sold the house, most of my friends left town, and Ashwood became nothing more than a place I occasionally thought about. Until my uncle passed away. His funeral was on a cold October afternoon. The weather matched the mood perfectly. Gray clouds covered the sky, and rain fell just hard enough to make everything look blurry. After the service, I stayed longer than everyone else. I visited my old neighborhood, drove past my elementary school, and even stopped outside the abandoned baseball field where my friends and I spent every summer pretending we'd become professionals someday. By the time I started driving back toward the highway, it was already dark. My GPS suggested Hollow Creek Road. I hadn't driven that road in almost 10 years. It was shorter than taking the interstate, so I ignored the uncomfortable feeling in my stomach and turned anyway. Nothing had changed. The trees still leaned over the road like they were trying to block out the sky. The same broken guardrails, the same faded signs, the same silence. About 15 minutes in, I noticed someone standing beneath an old bus stop shelter. A young woman, maybe 22. She wore a light gray hoodie and jeans, completely soaked from the rain. She wasn't waving frantically. She simply stood there with one hand in her pocket, watching the road like she'd been expecting someone. As I drove closer, she lifted her thumb. I hesitated. Every warning I'd ever heard about picking up strangers flashed through my mind. But she looked harmless. She looked exhausted. I pulled over. She opened the passenger door carefully, almost politely. "Thank you," she said with a small smile. Her voice was soft. Too soft. "Where are you headed?" I asked. "Into town. That's about 20 minutes, I know." Something about the way she answered made me glance at her. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring straight ahead. I started driving again. For the first few minutes, neither of us spoke. Rain tapped steadily against the windshield. Finally, she asked, "You've been gone a long time." I looked over. "What? You don't come back very often." I laughed awkwardly. "No, I guess not," she nodded. "I didn't think you would. That caught my attention. Do I know you?" "No." "You seem to know me." She smiled. "I know this town." Fair enough. Small towns had a way of making strangers feel familiar. Still, something felt off. We passed the old water tower. Without looking out the window, she quietly said, "The mural used to be blue." I looked. It had been repainted blue only 2 months earlier. There was no way she could have known without looking. I told myself it was coincidence, nothing more. A few minutes later, she asked, "Do you still keep your bedroom window open when it rains?" My hands tightened around the steering wheel. "Excuse me, you always like the sound." I stared at her. "I never said that." She didn't answer. Instead, she looked out into the darkness. The rest of the drive felt impossibly quiet. Every few minutes, she'd make another comment. "You used to hide under the stairs when your parents argued. You broke your wrist climbing the church fence. You buried a stray kitten behind the oak tree." Every single thing she mentioned had actually happened. None of it was public. None of it was something strangers could know. I finally pulled into a gas station. "I need coffee." That wasn't true. I just wanted to get away from her for a minute. She nodded. "I'll wait." Inside the store, I spent nearly 5 minutes pretending to browse snacks while trying to calm myself down. Eventually, I convinced myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe someone from town recognized me. Maybe she'd heard stories growing up. Maybe. I walked back outside. The passenger seat was empty. The door was closed. She was gone. I searched the parking lot, the bathrooms, behind the building. Nothing. No footprints. No one had seen her leave. I drove away feeling more confused than scared. Until 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was my father. "You almost home?" "Another hour." "You made it through Hollow Creek?" "Yeah." There was a long pause. Then he quietly asked, "Did you stop?" "No." I laughed nervously. He sighed. "When you were little." His voice became quieter. "You used to tell us about a girl who stood on Hollow Creek Road every time it rained." I felt my chest tighten. "What? You were 8. You said she kept asking people for rides." "I thought you were making it up." I almost drove off the road. "I never told you that." "You did." "No. I don't remember that." "You cried whenever we drove that road after dark." My mouth had gone completely dry. I ended the call a few minutes later. I couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. I kept replaying every second of that drive. When I finally reached my hotel, I grabbed my overnight bag from the back seat. That's when I noticed something. The blanket folded across the cargo area was damp. Not from rain, from someone sitting on it. There was also something else. A single folded photograph. It wasn't mine. The picture showed 5 children standing in front of Ashwood Elementary. One of them was me, 8 years old, smiling, standing beside a girl in a gray hoodie. Her hand rested on my shoulder. I don't remember taking that picture. I don't remember ever meeting her. But on the back, written in faded blue ink, were 6 words. Thanks for finally taking me home. I never went back to Ashwood after that. Last month, curiosity got the better of me. I searched old newspaper archives. After hours of digging, I found a tiny article from 1998. It mentioned that a 12-year-old girl disappeared while walking home during a rainstorm. Search parties never found her. The article included the only photograph police had released. She was wearing a gray hoodie. She looked exactly like the girl from my car. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night. My bedroom is completely silent, then my phone lights up by itself. Not with a call, not with a message, just a photograph. Always the same one. 5 children. One of them is me. Every few weeks I look at it again. Each time, she's standing a little closer. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more terrifying tales. And if you haven't already, check out one of our previous videos by clicking on your screen now.